The war on Draenor was over. Smoke still rose from the cracked ground. Buildings were broken. The sky was gray, and the air was full of dust. Human soldier Mark lay on his back among metal wreckage and scorched dirt. His chest hurt with every breath. He had a long scar that stretched across his body, from his shoulder to his side. The scar was old, from a fire years ago. Now, it throbbed as if it remembered the heat. Mark looked around. The battlefield was quiet. There were no more gunshots or shouting. He could hear only the wind. The alien warriors of the Varnai Empire had stopped fighting. The humans, too, had pulled back. A ceasefire had been called. Only hours ago, Mark had survived, but he didn't feel lucky. Footsteps crunched nearby. Mark turned his head. A tall figure moved through the smoke. She wore silver armor and carried a long blade on her back. Her eyes glowed softly. She was Varnai strong, tall, and calm. Her face was sharp, her skin pale with blue markings. Her hair was braided tightly behind her head. She walked slowly toward Mark. He wanted to move, but his body was weak. He thought she might finish him off. But she didn't raise her weapon. Instead, she knelt beside him. Her name was Vera, a respected warrior from the Varnai's high bloodline. She looked at Mark's chest, at the scar across it. Her hand hovered above it, then gently touched the skin. Mark flinched. Her fingers were cold, but the touch was careful, not painful. Her eyes locked with his. "You carry the fire," she said, her voice deep but smooth. Mark didn't understand. He tried to sit up, but his arms gave out. "You survived it," Vera said again. She placed her palm fully on the scar, and for a moment, her hand glowed faintly. The energy flowed into his skin like a soft pulse. Mark passed out. When Mark woke, he was no longer on the battlefield. He was inside a medical bay, covered in bandages. The room was clean, white, and quiet. A nurse gave him water and said he was lucky. They had found him just in time. "Where am I?" he asked. "You're on a neutral recovery ship," she said. "The war's on hold. You're safe for now." He sat up slowly. His body hurt, but the pain was dull now. He looked at his chest. The scar was still there, but something was different. It shimmered faintly under the light. It felt warmer than before. Later that day, a man in a dark uniform entered. He was from Earth's diplomatic team. "We need to talk," the man said. "Do you remember an alien woman touching your scar?" Mark frowned. "Yes." She didn't say much. "Just something about fire." The man nodded. "That was Vera. She's one of the Varnai's royal guard, high-ranking. When she touched your scar, she activated an ancient ritual." Mark stared. "What kind of ritual?" "She claimed you," the man said, "as her chosen mate." Mark almost laughed, but the man didn't look like he was joking. "She what?" "It's a sacred Varnai custom. They don't do it often. If a warrior finds someone with a certain mark, a sign of survival, they can form a bond for them. It's not just romantic. It's symbolic. It means peace, honor, and alliance." "I didn't agree to anything," Mark said, sitting up straighter. "You didn't have to. You responded with your eyes. That's enough in their culture. And now, she wants the bond formalized." Mark shook his head. "This has to be a mistake." "We thought so too," the man replied. "But she's already spoken to the Varnai Council. They're ready to use this as a path to diplomacy. They're calling it fate." Mark stood, wobbling a little. "I'm just a soldier. I don't want to be part of this." "I understand," the man said. "But if you walk away, the peace talks might fall apart. Right now, you're a symbol to both sides." Later that evening, Mark stood alone by a large window looking into the stars. His thoughts were tangled. The scar had always been a reminder of pain, of a past mistake during a failed mission. He had saved lives but got burned in the process. Now that same scar had brought him into something far bigger than himself. He heard the door behind him open. He turned. Vera stepped into the room. She wore no armor now, only a dark robe with silver threads. Her posture was straight, her face calm. Her eyes studied him carefully. "I did not mean to frighten you," she said. "You didn't," Mark replied. She stepped closer. "You carry the flame and survived. That is rare. I didn't ask for this, Mark said. I know, she replied. But neither did I yet. The bond is real. He looked at her closely. She wasn't like the others he had met in battle. There was no hate in her eyes, only something deeper, curiosity, perhaps, or belief. I'm just trying to understand, he said. Vera nodded. So am I. There was a silence between them. Then she added, if you choose to reject the bond, I will not stop you. But the old ways say this mark means more. That you were chosen by something greater than both of us. Mark didn't answer. He looked down at his scar, then back at her. He didn't know what came next, but he knew this moment would change everything. Mark sat on the edge of his bed in the recovery ship. The lights were dim, and the soft hum of machines filled the room. He stared at the scar on his chest. It no longer felt like just a wound. It felt like something more now, something active. Like it was waiting for something. A light knock came from the door. It slid open, and the human diplomat, Colonel Briggs, stepped inside. She is requesting your presence, Briggs said. Mark looked up. Vera? Briggs nodded. The Varnai hold a ceremony after the bond is formed. It's not binding by human law, but it means everything to their people. Right now, they believe this could be the first true alliance between our species. Mark stood slowly. What? If I don't go, they won't start a war again. But the peace talks might fall apart, Briggs said. And honestly, after what you went through on Drain 4, I think you deserve to know why she chose you. Mark followed him through the clean metal corridors of the recovery ship. Soldiers and diplomats nodded as he passed. Some looked curious, others nervous. When they reached the docking bay, a tall Varnai ship was waiting. Its design was smooth, almost like bone. At the entrance stood Vera, dressed in her ceremonial armor. It was dark with silver lines and glowing symbols. She looked proud and calm. Mark hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward. You came, she said. I have questions, he replied. Then come with me, she said, and I will answer. Inside the Varnai ship, everything felt strange but beautiful. The walls pulsed gently with light, and the air smelled of minerals and smoke. They walked through a long hall until they reached a chamber filled with blue fire in a circle. A few other Varnai warriors stood silently, watching. Vera walked to the center and turned to face him. This is the Bond Mark Hall, she said. It is where truth is spoken, where choices are made. Mark stepped into the circle with her. The fire around them rose slightly, but it did not burn. You carry the mark of flame, she said, and I recognized it when I saw you on the battlefield. Our stories tell of such a mark. It appears only on those who have faced death and returned with strength, not anger. Mark listened carefully. Our ancestors believe that those who carry this mark are chosen to guide unity between clans, between enemies, between worlds, she continued. Mark frowned. You think I'm some kind of chosen one? No, she said softly. Not chosen by us, chosen by fate. I only followed the sign. She held out a thin metal piece. It was shaped like a broken circle. This is the bond token, she said. If you accept it, the bond becomes complete in our culture. You will not be forced to stay with me, but to my people, we will be joined, spirit to spirit, not by control, but by choice. Mark stared at the token. I don't know what I want yet, he admitted. Then do not choose today, she said, but wear it for now, if only for peace. He took the token. It was warm in his hand. He placed it around his neck. As he did, a soft light glowed from his scar. The other Varnai warriors lowered their heads. Vera nodded once. The bond is not complete, she said, but now it is seen. They left the hall, walking together down a quiet path that curved through the ship. There were no guards. No one followed them. I'm not special, Mark said at last. I got this scar because I made a mistake. I ran into fire to save the soldiers. I didn't even think. I just moved. Vera stopped walking. That is why the bond responded, she said. You acted from courage, not pride. The flame did not break you. They stood silently for a while. You have questions still, she said. Yes, he replied. If I never speak to you again, what happens? I will feel the break, she said. But I will not force the bond. I will honor your choice. Mark nodded slowly. And if I continue this, then you will learn more about me, about our people, and about the power this bond holds. You will have my protection, my trust, and perhaps, in time, my heart. Mark was quiet for a moment. I don't know what I'm ready for, he said. Then stay close until you do, Vera said. They returned to the human ship. No one stopped them. Briggs met them in the main corridor. You're alive and not glowing. That's a good sign, he said. Mark gave a tired smile. I'm not sure what I agreed to, but for now, it feels better than war. Briggs looked at the token around Mark's neck. Well, he said, looks like diplomacy just got a lot more interesting. That night, Mark sat alone in his quarters. He looked at the token and then at his scar. He touched it lightly. It felt different, not just a reminder of pain now. It felt like a door had opened, a strange one, but maybe a good one. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he wasn't afraid of it. The next morning, Mark was called to the main meeting hall of the recovery ship. He had barely finished his breakfast when Colonel Briggs arrived at his door again. She has requested a formal ceremony, Briggs said. Today, Mark stood, surprised. That fast? Briggs nodded. The Varnai believe in acting while the bond is fresh. If you delay too long, they think the connection weakens. Vera has asked for a joining ritual. It's symbolic only, but it means a lot to her. People. Mark looked at the token still hanging around his neck. It pulsed faintly with warmth. I haven't made a final decision, he said. You don't have to. Just showing up is enough for now, Briggs replied. Besides, you might want to see it. Varnai rituals are rare. Few humans have ever witnessed one. Later that day, a Varnai shuttle arrived. It was smooth and bright, shaped like a long crystal. Mark stepped onto it with 2 escorts. No one spoke during the flight. Through the window, he saw stars slowly drifting by. The journey took less than an hour. And then they reached the Varnai ship where Vera waited. Mark was led to a large circular chamber. The walls were dark blue, covered in strange glowing symbols. In the center stood a round platform surrounded by golden stones. On each stone, a symbol flickered gently. Vera was already there. She wore a long robe made of layered cloth and armor pieces. Her face was calm, but her eyes watched Mark closely. You came, she said. I said I would, he replied. Several other Varnai stood round the circle. They did not speak, only bowed their heads slightly when Mark entered. Vera stepped into the center of the platform. She extended her hand. This is the ritual of seeing, she said. It is not a marriage. It is not a command. It is a bridge. If you join me, you will be seen as bonded in spirit, not law. This will bring peace. Between our sides, Mark stepped onto the platform and faced her. He looked around. Everyone was watching, but no one moved. The room was quiet. Then Vera spoke again, louder now. I speak to the ancestors. I bring forward a life that carries fire, a scar that does not shame, a heart that chose without knowing. She turned to Mark. Will you step forward? She asked. Mark took one slow step. The symbol under his feet glowed softly. Will you accept the mark, not as a burden, but as a path? She asked. Mark looked into her eyes. He still felt unsure, but something inside him said this moment mattered. I accept, he said quietly. The light around the platform grew brighter. A gentle hum filled the room. Vera lifted her hand and touched the token around Mark's neck. Her fingers brushed against the scar. When she touched it, a warm pulse ran through his body. It didn't hurt. It felt steady, like a heartbeat. The circle is seen, Vera said. The other Varnai around them bowed their heads. Then the light faded slowly. The ritual was done. Mark stepped back. His heart was beating fast, but his body was calm. Vera looked at him. It is complete. You are free to return now. Mark raised his eyebrows. That's it, she nodded. The bond is now known. You can choose what comes next. He followed the escorts back to the shuttle. As it lifted off, he looked back at the ship. Part of him thought the ritual would feel heavier, like a chain. But it didn't. It felt like something had been shared, not taken. Back on the recovery ship, Briggs met him again. "Well?" Briggs asked. "It wasn't what I expected," Mark replied. "It wasn't forced. It felt respectful." Briggs gave a slow nod. They value meaning in small things, sometimes more than we do. That evening, Mark sat alone with a small device in his hand. It held images and logs from his past missions. He opened the one that showed the fire. Years ago, during a battle on Titan Station, he had rushed into a collapsing corridor to pull out the trapped soldiers. He made it out, but the fire left its mark. The scar had followed him ever since. He had never thought it would mean anything more. The door behind him opened. Vera stood there, silent. "I can come back later," she said. "No, it's fine," Mark said. "Come in." She stepped inside and looked at the image on the device. "That was the fire," she said. Mark nodded. "It almost killed me, but it didn't," she replied. "You walked through it for others. That is why the bond responded." Mark placed the device down. He looked at her. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked. "No," Vera said. "I believe in action, but sometimes action leads to something we cannot explain." They sat in silence for a moment. "I don't know where this is going," Mark said, "but I want to understand it." Vera nodded. "Then we will learn together." For the first time, Mark didn't feel like a soldier. He didn't feel like a tool for peace or war. He felt like a man at the edge of something new, something strange, but not frightening. The scar on his chest no longer burned. It felt quiet now, like it had found peace. Days passed after the ceremony. The recovery ship stayed in orbit while peace talks continued. Mark had become a known name across both sides. Human officers treated him with new respect, and the Varnai warriors nodded politely whenever they passed him in the halls. But Mark still felt unsure inside. He was part of something bigger now, but he didn't know what it truly meant. Vera visited often. Sometimes they talked, other times they just sat in silence, watching the stars through the observation window. She never pushed him to decide anything. She never acted like he belonged to her. But there was always something calm and steady about her presence. One evening, she invited him to visit her quarters aboard the Varnai vessel. Mark hesitated, then agreed. Her room was simple. The walls were dark and smooth, shaped like flowing stone. Small symbols glowed along the edges. A soft breeze passed through, even though they were in space. "This is peaceful," Mark said. "It helps the mind stay sharp," Vera replied. She handed him a small bowl. It held a warm drink that smelled of herbs and smoke. "What is this?" Mark asked. "Root of the clarity tree," she said. "It helps warriors speak honestly." Mark took a sip. It tasted strange, but not bad. Vera sat across from him. "May I ask something?" she said. "Of course," Mark replied. "Why did you run into the fire on Titan Station? You had no shield, no command to do it." Mark looked down for a moment. "There were 2 soldiers trapped inside," he said. "The fire was spreading fast. I didn't think. I just moved." "But you could have died," Vera said. "I know," Mark said. "But if I had waited for orders, they would have burned. I couldn't watch that happen." Vera nodded slowly. "This is what we were taught to admire," she said. "Not power, not control, but choice, real choice, made from the heart." She stood and walked to a large display screen. A series of symbols lit up as she touched them. A memory played on the wall, images of a battle from long ago. Varnai warriors fought against a rival tribe. In the center of the fight, one warrior stepped forward with no weapon, only a burning scar on his chest. "That was our ancestor," Vera said. "He ended the war by standing between 2 armies. He carried the fire inside him. Just like you." Mark watched the image carefully. The warrior in the memory stood calm and unafraid. "Is that why you chose me?" Mark asked. "Because of your history." Vera turned to him. "I did not choose you because of duty. I felt something when I saw your scar. Not just tradition, not just signs. I felt truth." Mark sat quietly for a moment. Then he asked, "What does it mean to be your bondmate?" Vera stepped closer. "It means you are not mine to own," she said, "but mine to trust. You walk your path, I walk mine. but we share the light between us. That sounds peaceful, Mark said. It can be, she replied. But not everyone agrees with it. Mark looked at her carefully. What do you mean? Vera lowered her voice. There are some in the Varnai Council who do not support this bond. They say it weakens our line. They believe you are too different. Mark frowned. I thought they accepted the ritual. They accepted it publicly. Vera said, but in private, they speak of breaking the bond. Some believe I should choose one of my own. Mark stood. So they want to erase all this? After everything, Vera looked at him with calm eyes. They will try, but I will not allow it. Mark felt a strange mix of anger and fear. He had followed their customs. He had tried to respect their beliefs, and still, there were those who wanted to push him away. You said this bond is about trust, he said. It is, Vera said. Then tell me the truth, Mark said. Do you regret choosing me? Vera did not answer at once. She stepped closer, until they stood only a breath apart. I do not regret it, she said. I would choose again. Even now, Mark felt the words settle inside him like a weight, but not a heavy one. It felt grounding. I won't let them break this either, he said. Vera gave a small nod. Then we must stand together. That night, Mark returned to his quarters on the human ship. He looked out at the stars. The bond around his neck still glowed faintly. He remembered the scar, the fire, and the pain. But now, he also remembered her words. The scar was no longer a reminder of survival. It was a mark of connection, a bond not made by force, but by choice. He didn't know what the council would do next. He didn't know what battles might come. But for now, he had something to fight for, and someone to stand beside. 2 days after their last meeting, Mark was called to attend a council session on the Varnai ship. It was not a request, it was a formal summons. Colonel Briggs was already waiting for him when he arrived at the shuttle bay. You should be careful in there, Briggs said. Something feels off. The tone of the message was too cold. Mark adjusted the token around his neck. Vera said some of them don't accept our bond. Maybe they're making their move. Briggs looked uneasy. Whatever happens, speak. Carefully, you're not just a soldier anymore. You're a symbol. The Varnai ship was quiet when they arrived. No one greeted them at the entrance. They were led down a wide hallway into a large room shaped like a circle. The floor was smooth, with a glowing symbol in the center. Around it stood 8 Varnai council members. Each wore a long robe with silver markings. Vera stood near the center. Calm and silent, dot at the far side stood Torque, one of the most powerful warriors in the Varnai Empire. He was taller than the others, with deep blue markings across his arms. His expression was cold, his posture rigid. Human, Torque said without emotion. You have entered our bond circle. We ask you to stand and answer. Mark stepped forward. I'm here. Torque looked at Vera. You chose this human. You claimed he carries the mark, but I question his honor. Mark felt the tension in the room rise. Vera remained still. Torque stepped closer. Let the human prove his strength. Let him face the trial of fire. If he survives, he keeps the bond. If not, we return to our own ways. Vera spoke at last. The trial is not for outsiders. Torque raised his voice. He is not an outsider. You brought him in. Let him walk our path. The council members murmured among themselves. Then one elder stepped forward and said, The law is old, but fair. Let the human choose. Mark looked at Vera. She met his eyes, calm but alert. You do not have to do this, she said. This is their trap. Mark thought for a moment. Then he stepped into the circle. I'll take the trial, he said. Not for pride, but for truth. Torque smiled faintly. Then let it begin. The next morning, Mark stood outside the trial hall. It was a massive structure on the surface of the Varnai moon. Inside was a path of challenges meant to test mind, body, and spirit. No weapons were allowed, only courage. Vera stood beside him. She placed her hand on his chest. This trial is not about strength alone, she said. It's about endurance, calm, wisdom. They want to see you fail. I know, Mark said, but I've faced worse things than fire. She looked at him with quiet pride, then returned to me. He stepped into the hall. The door closed behind him. Inside, the path was dark and narrow. The walls seemed to move as he walked. Heat rose from the floor. His scar began to warm. He took deep breaths and kept walking. The first challenge was a wall of shifting light. It made his eyes blur. His steps grew heavy. He closed his eyes and moved slowly, trusting his feet. He reached the other side without falling. The second challenge was a room filled with whispering voices. They sounded like people he had lost in the past, his commander, a fallen teammate, his own younger self. The voices asked him to turn back, to give up. Mark stood still and listened. Then he spoke out loud, "I carry them with me. I don't leave." Then behind, the voices stopped. The final challenge was a long tunnel filled with rising heat. Flames danced along the sides, not touching him, but close enough to burn if he lost focus. He walked carefully, feeling his scar grow warmer with every step. Halfway through, his knees shook. Sweat ran down his face, his vision blurred. He remembered the fire on Titan Station, the screams, the pain, the fear. But he also remembered why he ran in. He remembered the faces he saved. He remembered walking out alive. He took one more step, then another. Then finally, the heat faded. He reached the exit. The doors opened, and light filled the space. Vera was there. So was the council. So was Tork. Mark stood tall, breathing hard but steady. Tork said nothing. The council elder raised her voice. "The human has completed the trial. The bond stands." Vera stepped forward and placed her hand on Mark's scar. "You did not walk it alone. I felt every step." Mark looked at her. "And I came back to you." The crowd around them stayed silent, but the energy had changed. The test was over. The message was clear. Later that night, Mark stood outside the observation deck with Vera beside him. "They'll still watch us," he said. "They always will." She replied, "Then we give them something worth watching." She smiled softly. "You walked the path not meant for you, and made it yours." Mark looked out at the stars. "I didn't just do it for the bond," he said. "I did it because I believe in what it means." She touched his hand, and for the first time, he did not pull away. The council had accepted the bond. Mark was no longer just a soldier or a symbol. He was a part of something new, a bridge between humans and the Varnai. But the path ahead was still uncertain. Vera stood beside him on the observation deck of the Varnai ship. Outside, stars stretched across the dark sky like scattered diamonds. The silence was peaceful but heavy with meaning. "We made it this far," Mark said quietly. "But I know it's only the start." Vera nodded. "The council may accept the bond, but not everyone will. There are those who fear change." Mark looked at the scar on his chest. It had healed, but it remained a reminder of the past. Now it was also a promise for the future. "I want to do more than survive," he said. "I want to help build something better." Vera smiled softly. "That is why I chose you." Days turned into weeks. Mark and Vera worked together, meeting with leaders, sharing stories, and building trust. Slowly, walls of fear began to break down. Humans and Varnai alike saw that the bond was more than tradition. It was a hope. One evening, Mark received a message from Earth. His unit was being reassigned. The war was officially over, but peace required new efforts. He would be sent to a new post, one focused on diplomacy and alliance. Mark told Vera. She took his hand gently. "We will face this together," she said. He smiled. "I don't think I could do it without you." On the day of his departure, the two stood at the ship's airlock. The token round Mark's neck glowed softly in the dim light. "Promise me one thing," Vera said. "Anything. Promise you will keep the bond alive, no matter where you go." Mark looked into her eyes. "I promise." They embraced, holding each other tightly. It was not just a goodbye, it was a promise for the future. As Mark stepped onto the shuttle to Earth, he felt a calm strength inside him. The scar on his chest no longer hurt. It was a symbol of survival, of courage, and of a bond that crossed worlds. The galaxy was wide and full of challenges, but Mark was ready, with Vera by his side now. Matter the distance, he was no longer alone. He was chosen, and he would live up to that. After passing the trial of fire, Mark thought the hardest part was behind him. But the Varnai Council had one final test before fully accepting the bond. It was called the Trial of Iron, and Smoke. Mark stood at the entrance of a large arena built deep inside the Varnai capital ship. The walls were dark and cold, made of polished stone. Smoke drifted across the floor in thin clouds. A soft red glow illuminated the room, as if the place itself was breathing fire. Vera was with him. She wore her warrior armor, but moved with quiet grace. Her eyes held a calm strength that steadied Mark's nerves. This trial is about endurance. In spirit, she said, it is the last step. They will test your mind and body as one. Mark nodded. He felt ready, but nervous. He had never faced anything like this before. The doors opened, and a low rumble echoed through the room. Shapes moved in the smoke, shadows stretching and shrinking. Mark stepped forward. The first challenge was a path of hot stones. His boots touched the glowing floor. The heat was sharp but not unbearable. He moved carefully, one step at a time, focusing on balance. The stones shifted slightly under his weight, testing his focus. Halfway across, the smoke thickened. It smelled of burning wood and ash. Mark's breathing grew shallow. He remembered his scar. The fire that had left it. He pushed past the memory and kept moving. The next area was filled with iron bars hanging from the ceiling. They swung slowly. Like pendulums, Mark had to dodge and weave, moving quickly but without rushing. A mistake meant being hit by the heavy metal. He ducked under one bar, then twisted to the side just as another swung past his head. Sweat rolled down his face. But he did not stop. The rhythm of the bars became a challenge, like a dance, he learned. Their timing. When he reached the end of the swinging bars, a deep voice echoed through the chamber. Who are you to walk this path? It asked. Mark stopped and looked around. No one was visible, but the voice was strong and clear. I'm Mark, he said, a man who has faced fire and lived. The smoke shifted again. A shape formed in front of him, a tall figure in warrior's armor, eyes glowing with power. You carry the scar of survival, the figure said. But do you carry the heart of a warrior? Mark clenched his fists. I carry courage, even when I fear. The figure smiled faintly. Then prove it. Suddenly, the arena filled with swirling smoke. Mark could barely see. He heard the clatter of metal and the rush of air as weapons swung near him. He ducked and rolled. Feeling the heat and cold around him, he remembered Vera's words about calm and wisdom. He did not fight blindly. He moved with purpose. After a tense moment, the smoke cleared. The figure was gone. Mark was alone in the silence. A soft light lit a small platform ahead. Mark stepped onto it. The voice returned. You have passed the trial of iron and smoke. You are worthy. The doors opened, and Vera stepped inside. She smiled warmly. You did well, she said. The council will accept the bond. Mark felt a mix of relief and pride. The journey was not easy, but it was his own. Later, as they walked through the ship, Vera held his hand for the first time. It was a small gesture, but it said more than words. Mark looked at her and smiled. Thank you, he said. For what? She asked. For trusting me, for standing by me. Vera squeezed his hand gently. We face many challenges ahead, but together we are stronger. Mark nodded. The scar on his chest no longer felt like a curse. It was a symbol of strength, of survival, and of connection.